Hello and welcome to the program. Opening this weekend at theaters across the country, Mission Impossible 7 with Tom Cruise. But another movie that's getting a lot of buzz since its release, 4th of July weekend, is the movie Sound of Freedom, starring Jim Caviezel as a former government agent turned vigilante who embarks on a mission to rescue children from sex traffickers in Colombia. And although child sex trafficking may feel like it's a crime that happens far away from the United States, the reality is that it does happen right here in our own backyard. And that is why it is important to raise awareness and to help out those agencies doing what they can to protect and to help those who have been trafficked or abused. One of the nonprofits that helps abused and neglected children here in North Texas is Dallas CASA, court-appointed special advocates. Joining me today in studio to talk about the work that they do is Kathleen LaValle. She is the president and CEO of Dallas CASA. Kathleen and her team are on the front lines when it comes to helping abused and neglected children. And coming up on Friday, July 14th, they will kick off their annual Parade of Playhouses at NorthPark Center in Dallas. The event showcases some incredible playhouses for children that are raffled off with the proceeds benefiting Dallas CASA and the work that they do. Kathleen joins me right now to talk about the Parade of Playhouses, but also to highlight the work that CASA does to help children. Kathleen, welcome to the program. It's so good to see you in person.
Anna, it's great to be here and to visit with you.
For someone not familiar with Dallas CASA, what would you tell them about how CASA helps abused and neglected children here in North Texas?
So our mission is to protect children and restore childhood. And so we are appointed by the judges who preside over child welfare cases, and through our volunteer advocates who are trained and supervised by our professional staff. Those advocates form a caring relationship with each child, and so they're able to tell the court what are the circumstances of this individual child. What does their world look like? Are they being protected where they're at on a temporary basis? Are they getting the schooling, the medical, the therapeutic support they need to recover from trauma? And so that's a major role that we play in the court system to make sure that judges can make the very best decisions in the best interest of each child.
Why is CASA needed if we have child protective services, Kathleen?
So the way that we are different and the reason our role is unique is that our volunteers are appointed to one case at a time, and so we don't have that challenge of the large caseload that our CPS caseworkers or even our attorneys have in child welfare court cases. And so that's a huge advantage. We have more bandwidth to be able to really get into the details and focus on finding that family member who may be able to be a placement for the child, really getting into, their academic progress and, do they need tutoring? Do they need some kind of special education assessment? We're able to get into that level of support for each child because we have a more focused approach and a broader bandwidth.
Is that why CASA was created in the first place, to make sure that the child was getting that individual attention and not being lost in the shadows?
That's absolutely right, Anna. And so the idea is that if you are focused on this one case at a time, and that could be a one child or a sibling group, that you'll be able to pick up on some of the nuances in a child's life that others may miss because they have such a heavier workload. But there's another important component of it as well, and that's continuity. Because a child in foster care faces so many changes and so much uncertainty. Their caseworker can change. They can their attorneys can change.
The foster
therapies.
family.
They can move placements multiple times while they're in this protective care system. And so that's why we really see it as kind of our signature that we are the constant. We are there, typically appointed at the very front end of a case where a child's been removed because of concerns for safety and health. And then we stay on that case until it concludes. And that could be, several years later.
Who can become a court-appointed special advocate?
I love this question because there's so many misconceptions about what kind of background you need to be a volunteer advocate. And the reality is there is no single profile. You do not need a background in social work or child welfare. You don't need to be an attorney. And so it really, what you need is a large heart, a lot of patience, and a willingness to learn. I think that those are the characteristics of our strongest advocates, that they are patient but persistent. And so they recognize that the system sometimes moves more slowly than we would like, but they don't ever give up on that child. And they don't ever let the child give up on themselves, because that is one of the greatest risks of being in foster care, is that you simply stop caring and you stop imagining a different future for yourself. And so I think one of the real strengths of the CASA model is that we try to be sure a child isn't defined or restricted by their time in foster care. And we try to remind them that they are not just the sum of their challenging circumstances, that there's promise there, there's hope there.
Since you want that one-on-one attention with the CASA volunteer and the child, how big is the need right now to make sure that the children that are in foster care get that attention?
So we have a constant need. All of the CASA programs, in terms of recruiting volunteers, have an ongoing need. You know, we have extraordinary volunteers. We had 1,300 actively assigned volunteers last year, serving over 2,600 children. But, you know, cases close, folks go on to other opportunities. So we're always in need of recruiting new volunteer advocates, and that's why it's so important to raise awareness of the opportunity.
How young can a person be to become a court-appointed special advocate, and how old? Is there an age limit?
So I love this question because of kind of a unique characteristic of the Dallas CASA volunteer ranks. You have to be 21 years old, which you would expect because it takes a certain maturity and collection of experiences to be able to be a child advocate. There's no upper limit. What I've love about our community is that we have as many 20 and 30-year-olds stepping into this critical role as we do 60 and above. And that's fairly unusual for a CASA program. Sometimes they are more inclined to be retirees. And somehow or other, we have, knock on wood, been able to share and communicate to the community that, you know, you can be as effective as a 25-year-old doing this role as a retiree, and that you can manage it. Over 85% of our volunteers are full-time employed. And I think that's important to know, that a lot of the scheduling is self-scheduling other than our court hearings.
Because that probably would be an obstacle for somebody who's listening right now and thinking, I would love to do something like this. I have a heart for this, but I don't think I have the time. So you're saying that you self-schedule. What is the training like?
Well, the training is extraordinary, and this was something that really came out of, you know, our incredibly tragic experience with the pandemic. We instantly went into virtual training when we went into shutdown.
And that made it a lot easier for people.
Well, it actually made it easier. There's something lost in going entirely virtual, that sense of being part of a community and a cohort of individuals who are like-minded and committed to a cause. So what we have right now, Anna, is a hybrid. Still have 3 lengthy in-person sessions, but the rest of the hours are done using an on-demand system and Zoom. And so it's really, the majority of it is now virtual. And what we're hearing from our trainees who complete the program is they absolutely love it. They love having that in-person contact, so they have a sense of being part of a group. But they love being able to, you know, log in and look at videos and do the assignments on their schedule, which has really made it an opportunity that is more open to a broader range of individuals.
Are there any other obstacles that you see that might stop somebody from becoming a court-appointed special advocate?
So youthful indiscretions will not stop, but we do look at criminal background. We actually are constrained by regulation and statutes in terms of certain types of violence, for example, past criminal convictions. So we obviously, you would want us to look at that.
Absolutely.
These are adults who are going to have contact with children and children who've been subject to trauma. And so we do carefully vet in terms of background.
And if somebody wants information on the training on becoming a court-appointed special advocate, you can go to the website dallascasa.org or casa.org. My guest once again today, Kathleen LaValle, the president and CEO of Dallas CASA, Court-Appointed Special Advocates, a nonprofit that helps abused and neglected children in our area. Their mission is to protect children, restore childhood, and help child victims of abuse and neglect achieve their full potential. According to the CDC, at least 1 in 7 children have experienced child abuse or neglect in the past year in the United States. And the CDC believes that that number is actually an underestimate because many cases are unreported. Here in our area, we have a lot of nonprofits doing their part to protect these children, including Dallas CASA. Kathleen has been telling us about their work and also how we can help raise awareness and do so much more. Now, one of your big events that you have each and every year is the Parade of Playhouses. And this raises awareness about the work that you do, and it also raises funds. It will kick off on Friday, July 14th, this coming Friday at NorthPark Center in Dallas. What do you want someone who's never been to the Parade of Playhouses, who has never gone through the mall and seen those incredible playhouses? I always say it's Pimp My Playhouse, because these are not your normal playhouses that you're going to see outside of Home Depot or Lowe's. These are incredible playhouses. What do you want someone to know about this event and what they can expect this year?
Well, there's lots going on this year. We're very excited. It's our 28th Parade of Playhouses, and we're so grateful to be back at NorthPark Center, which is an incredible host. It's an extraordinary gallery for these very creative and artistic playhouses. So what we want people to know is that while you're admiring the craftsmanship and then the imagination that goes into these designs and these buildings, to know that it's a stand-in for us. It's a proxy. It's a symbol for what we do. For restoring childhood. And we hope when you see in them, you'll see the promise of a better future for children who have been victims of abuse and neglect. We don't allow the media to take pictures of the children that we serve, children who are in foster care for obvious reasons, including privacy. But we want you to have a sense of what is at the heart of our mission, and that is a safe place for children to live and grow up and be loved. And that's what the playhouses represent. And honestly, there is no event we do year-round that raises more awareness of the opportunity to become a volunteer advocate than Parade of Playhouses. So while you're filling out that raffle ticket, there's going to be a volunteer advocate at that table who might just ask, do you want to know what Dallas CASA is all about? Do you want to know what opportunities there are? You may hear about, we do weekly information sessions that are virtual, so you can hear about the role and see if it's a good fit for you. Or maybe you learn about it and you pass it along to somebody else who may be looking for this opportunity to have a real impact on children.
What are some of the designs that people can check out this year?
They're always extraordinary, and I'm always amazed that there aren't duplicates, but the ones from this year are particularly amazing. We have a yellow submarine-themed playhouse for the first time. We have a spaceship. The Mavs have come back. The Dallas Mavericks will be back for, I think it's their 4th year, and this year the shape will be like a basketball shoe. We have our presenting sponsor, Crest Auto, Crest Volvo, Cadillac, and Infinity will have this amazing playhouse that opens up and becomes a putting course, a golf putting course. It's so adorable. And then LRO, they always do the most amazing cottages, and this year it'll be a classic American cottage. So they had one a couple of years back that they called She Shed, and a lot of women like we were buying those raffle tickets for that She Shed. And we have a movie theater, a Hobbit house. I mean, just the imagination that goes into these works just continues to amaze me.
And the beauty of it, Kathleen, is that they're not being auctioned off to the highest bidder. Everybody has an opportunity. The raffle tickets are $5 each, so everybody has an opportunity to be able to take one of these playhouses home.
Absolutely, and it's Dallas may feel like a big city, but you'd be surprised how many people you may personally know who've won a playhouse at Parade of Playhouses. So it really is a level playing field, and you can. We hope you'll come out to NorthPark Center and see them in person and buy tickets, but you also can get them online at DallasCASA.org. We're particularly grateful to our Grand Marshal, KDC, who helped to recruit so many of the designers and builders who are involved this year.
It's Parade of Playhouses going on July 14th through July 30th, so plenty of time to check out these playhouses. And are you going to have the pictures up later this week on the website?
We are, and so you'll be able to see the schematics of the houses even before they move in, and we get to do our panoramic kind of videos and 3D postings on the website of each house.
And it's a $5 raffle ticket, and you can buy those either on site or online as well, DallasCASA.org. You talked about how this raises awareness, and oftentimes people may have heard of CASA but not fully understood what all you did. What are some of the misconceptions that you hear from people that maybe perhaps it's like, oh, I've always thought about doing something like this, but I don't think I could because it would be too sad?
I think there are several misconceptions. Sometimes because child welfare is complicated and it's a fairly long elevator speech to really understand what our role is, sometimes individuals believe that we're recruiting foster parents. And that is not part of our role. No. We need foster parents, but that is not part of our role. We are appointed by the courts to represent the best interests of each child, so that there's someone standing in the courtroom on a volunteer basis who brings into that deliberation the community standard, how you'd want your niece, your nephew, your son or daughter to be treated in this situation. So that makes us fairly unique. So that's one misconception. The other is that it will just be too overwhelmingly emotional and sad, and you'll want to take every child home. And I don't promise you won't want to take every child home, but I can tell you that our volunteers tell us that it's so forward-looking, it's so hopeful. I mean, you really are focused on solutions for children. You're not an investigator, so you are not focused on what was a harm that was done to this child. You're very much focused on recovery. And very much focused on trying to restore some sense of normalcy. So a child will, be optimistic about what the future looks like. And so I hear people are concerned about it would be somehow just too depressing. But what you hear from our volunteer advocates is that they are encouraged every day by the resilience of children, that they are amazing forces of energy who bounce back and who respond, so lovingly and enthusiastically to a reliable adult. I mean, if you are the adult who shows up when you say you will, you're modeling for that child what a reliable, trustworthy adult looks like in a way that they may not have experienced previously. And so that is such a significant role. And we hear from all of our volunteers that while they came to it with a spirit of giving and generosity and wanting to have purpose in their life, that what they take away from it is just a gratitude for the opportunity to have this kind of impact in the life of a child.
And I do want to emphasize once again that you do not need to have a social work background or a legal background to become a court-appointed special advocate.
And that's absolutely right. And also, sometimes folks are not aware you can be a co-CASA. So you could partner with somebody at work, your best friend from college. You could, do a mother-daughter team. And sometimes that helps, particularly if you have a job that makes it difficult to get away for hearings, court hearings, for example. So you might partner with someone who maybe has a little bit more flexibility in their schedule.
Do you have very many men that volunteer?
Not enough. So they're only about 15%.
I would think that there would be a huge need to have male role models be court-appointed special advocates.
Well, that's absolutely right. But if you see nationally in terms of nonprofit volunteer opportunities, we're right at the national average with 15%. We do have a Men of CASA kind of affinity group where we try to encourage men to become involved. And it particularly for our teenage boys, it's just critical to have those positive role models. We also always strive to have our volunteer ranks be more diverse because you have, racial disproportionality in the child welfare system. And that means that, although Black children make up 22% of Dallas County population, they represent 44% of the number of children who are removed and brought into the child welfare system. And so we also actively recruit volunteers of color to come in, and so that they can be representative, and so that in those early meetings with children, they can have that sense of connection.
My guest once again today, Kathleen LaValle, the president and CEO of Dallas CASA, court-appointed special advocates. They are a nonprofit that helps abused and neglected children here in our area. Their vision is a time when all children experience safe and enriching childhoods. You can find out more about the work that they do and volunteer opportunities and so much more at dallascasa.org. And while you're there, you can find out more about the upcoming Parade of Playhouses, now in its 28th year. It's going to get underway at NorthPark Center in Dallas on Friday, July 14th, and run through July 30th. Buy a raffle ticket for $5 a piece. That money is going to go towards the work that Dallas CASA does. Find out more at dallascasa.org. I mentioned at the beginning of the program, Kathleen, this movie, Sound of Freedom, that's getting a lot of buzz on social media lately. It's based on a true story about the fight against child trafficking, with people on social media talking about the importance of saving children. But so many believe it happens, like in the movie, in Colombia, in Africa, in third world countries. But it's happening right here in the United States. It's happening here in North Texas. Back in 2020, Dallas CASA began training your staff and also your volunteers, the court-appointed special advocates, on the issue of child trafficking. Tell me about that training and why it's so vitally important for you to have that as part of the training.
So this is a form of advanced training that we offer to existing CASA volunteers. So these are individuals who have already gone through the basic training and in most cases have already served on at least one, if not more cases. What we realized was that we needed to have that skill set available to our volunteers to recognize the signs that a child was a victim of sex trafficking. It's not a third world country problem. I mean, Texas is among the top states in terms of the volume of sex trafficking cases that exist. It's heartbreaking. And so we wanted to make sure that our volunteers had the skills necessary to be effective advocates for survivors of sex trafficking, because it's really a different challenge. Recidivism, the possibility that a teen is rescued from sex trafficking and then goes back.
Because it's all they know.
It's all they know, and
it's easy for them to be lured back in because of money or because they feel like they don't fit in.
And it's also, I mean, once you've been part of that dark world, there is a sense of unworthiness, to operate and walk in the world that we know. And so there really is, unfortunately, a high rate of return. And so to recognize that and understand the strategies to help break that cycle is absolutely critical. And so we offer this special training to advocates, as I mentioned, an advanced training. We developed it with another nonprofit that's based in California called Saving Innocence. And it's now actually it's a series of videos and then live presentations. And the video part of it is actually housed now on our state member organization website. So it's available to all 72 CASA programs in Texas, which we're very proud of, because not every program is our size and, is able to serve every child in their county and has the resources that we do to be able to offer this specialized training. So we're very pleased and privileged to be able to share it.
I know that when you launched it, one of the things that you said back in 2020, even before the pandemic started, was that the children that you serve through CASA are at bigger risk for becoming child sex trafficked or child trafficked victims.
So children who have been in foster care have a higher risk of so many dangers, and that includes, aging out of foster care and ended up homeless or food insecure or incarcerated or addicted to drugs. And so there's so many risks, but the sex trafficking one is particularly high because in many instances the children have been exposed to sexual abuse before coming into care. And so it is not as foreign as it might be to other children. And so that puts them at particular risk. And they also just don't have that caring support, that circle of support, the family, the extended family, looking out for them and making sure that they don't fall prey to this quick money or this, I'll get your nails done. I mean, you think of it as, they must have just entered into it. They immediately went into commercial sex trafficking. No, it starts out in the Romeo phase. I mean, it starts out with, a young, vulnerable teenage girl believing that this older man cares about her and, it's gotten her an iPhone and a place to live, and then ultimately moves into, everybody in this household has to do their share. And that's how the grooming takes place and the progression into sex trafficking. And it's heartbreaking because it does change the way a young man or a young woman really thinks of themselves in such a profound way. That's why it's important that we know everything we can to be able to be strong advocates for them.
That's why I want to raise awareness about this issue, is so that we can get that conversation started and more people will know about what's going on and either raise funds for organizations like Dallas CASA or raise awareness and get involved by becoming a volunteer as well. Do you ever have instances where someone who was a child that was served by CASA becomes a court-appointed special advocate themselves?
Yes, we have had several, and it's we had one young woman who came in, and she was a young financial analyst, and she came in and she said, "Well, I know he can't possibly still be a volunteer advocate because he served me when I was a teenager in care," and it turned out it was. Shout out to Larry Dolan. It was someone who, has been a volunteer for us for more than 20 years and is still a volunteer. And I love the story because he didn't think he'd made that much of an impression on her. He thought he had more impact on her brothers, but he took her to therapy every week and took her to visits with her siblings. And from her perspective, he made a huge impact. And so you may not always see that gratitude in the moment, but just know that you can, that you can really have a lasting impact that you just may not even be aware of. And back, Anna, to your point about our children who have been victimized, we had an example recently that was really both heartbreaking and hopeful, and that was a teen who had aged out of foster care and had a CASA volunteer, had a close relationship with a volunteer and our staff member. She'd been trafficked as a teenager. She fell into it again, ended up going to Austin, accepting an offer of a much older man. We were able to, through contact through the governor's office and a nonprofit in Travis County and the Dallas Police Department Special Investigation Unit for High-Risk Youth, able to recover that young woman who's now a young adult and bring her back to Dallas and find a residential program for her. And so that connection, having formed that trusting relationship, we really count on that to remain a way that a child who is victimized and re-victimized will have a place to reach out. DallasCasa.org if you want more information. If you would like to become a court-appointed special advocate, DallasCasa.org. You can also find information about the Parade of Playhouses presented by Crest Auto Group. It's going to open to the public at NorthPark Center in Dallas
this Friday, July 14th, and run through July 30th. Kathleen LaValle, thank you so much for being on the program today.
Great to see you, Anna. Thanks so much.